Hey everyone, Jay here, and I'm back from the annual Specialty Coffee Association Expo that was held this past weekend in Houston. One of the things that rocked the industry the day before the show started was the announcement by the Specialty Coffee Association that they were going to take over the Q program from CQI, the Coffee Quality Institute. Now, this is something that is impacting coffee professionals around the world. If you're not too familiar, the Q grading system is the quality grading system for specialty coffee, and it was started many years ago by Ted Lingle, who used to be the executive director of the Specialty Coffee Association of America, which is the predecessor that was the foundation for both the Specialty Coffee Association of Europe as well as the merged Specialty Coffee Association of America and Specialty Coffee Association of Europe that became the Specialty Coffee Association. That is what is in existence today. Now, if you follow this channel, you know that we're not really a big hard news channel. This is probably going to be some of the hardest news that we're ever going to cover, but I thought that this was something very interesting that is affecting coffee professionals worldwide. Now, will this affect the way that you, the general consumer, buys your coffee? I do not think so. I don't think there'll be any effect that you'll be able to see on your end, because right now you're not seeing any real effect from how people are grading coffee under the current Q system. But what I wanted to do today was to share with you a video that I shot during the show. Since I was at the show as part of the press corps, I was afforded access to some of the press events, and one of those was basically a press conference about this new revised Q program that the SCA is going to be rolling out by the end of this year. Now, I'm not going to give you any kind of interpretation. I'm not going to give you any kind of extrapolation from what I've seen from different sectors of the industry. In this particular video, I'm just going to let you see the actual footage as I shot it, unedited. Let the Specialty Coffee Association representatives speak for themselves, and you'll also get to hear some of the questions that myself and other members of the press corps asked during this session. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you find it informative, and I'm interested to see what you think about what's going to happen as this all moves forward. I know that there's probably a lot of you that have a lot of thoughts on it, so let's get to it.
Great. So we're going to talk about the coffee value assessment, which Andrew, past board of directors for SCA, and also a CVA ambassador, and also runs Coffee Knowledge Hub, is going to give us a presentation about the coffee value assessment, and he's also going to allow some time to answer questions. So just an informal chat, and thank you for joining us, and I'll hand the floor over to Andrew.
Yeah. Okay, so a warm welcome to you all. Thank you for coming. My voice might have a tendency to sort of drift off, so if the volume starts to go down, then just let me know and I'll just speak up. Okay, so just shout at me. We're going to cover the CVA. I'll tell you about specialty coffee, about coffee value assessment, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions if you want to ask questions afterwards. Okay, and as Anna said, I'm Andrew Tolley. I am the Vice President of the Board of the Specialty Coffee Association. And I've been on the board now for, I think this is my third or fourth year. I lose track. It all kind of blurs. But I think it was the first year I was on the board. We were in a board meeting in Guatemala, and this idea of the coffee value assessment was presented. And it was a really groundbreaking idea for changing the way in which we assess and value specialty coffee. And so that's a journey that started back in 2022, and here we are in 2025, and it's been a really successful launch. So it was launched back in 2023 as a concept at the Portland SCA Expo show. It was in a sort of beta phase. It was tested amongst a wider audience of coffee professionals, and the feedback was sought from this audience, a global audience of coffee professionals. Over 800 people gave feedback on the coffee value assessment, which was then incorporated into the coffee value assessment system before it was launched fully in June of 2024, so just last year. So it's been a long process, a long iterative process to get it to the stage where we are now. So we're here. It's the SCA Expo. It's in Houston. It's the Specialty Coffee Association's biggest North American event. It is an event that has people from across the entire value chain here represented. So we've got producing countries all the way to retail stores. Everyone who touches coffee in some way, shape or form in the trade is here at this show. It's a really important show. And it's a specialty coffee show. It's a Specialty Coffee Association. And the Specialty Coffees Association's purpose is, it's the largest global coffee trade association. And the purpose, and I'll read it out, is to foster a global coffee community and support activities to make specialty coffee a thriving, equitable, and sustainable initiative or endeavor for the entire value chain. Okay, so that's the purpose or mission of the Specialty Coffee Association. So, like with every purpose or mission, there's some big words in there, and we could spend hours discussing what each one of those actually means. But the words I want you to focus on here, because I've used them multiple times, is specialty coffee. Okay, what is specialty coffee? Now, that is a question that might sound a bit odd because we're the Specialty Coffee Association. But actually, it was only in 2021 that we agreed a common definition for what actually is specialty coffee. It's a term, if you want to go back in history, it was first coined in the 1970s. There was the sort of godmother of specialty coffee, a lady called Erna Knudsen. She coined the term because she was she was working in a coffee trading company, and she was identifying that there were coffees on the table that were different, that they were unique, that they were special. And so she started marketing these coffees as being specialty. That's the very truncated history of the term specialty coffee. But that was back in the 1970s. A lot of things happened in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, which got us to the stage where Specialty Coffee Association was launched, where we were scoring and assessing coffee. There was a cupping handbook to go through and to teach people how to assess coffee using sensory methods and physical methods, and like defining roasting coffee standards and so on. But actually, the definition for what specialty coffee was, it evolved a lot from that 2001 or 2004 stage where the previous coffee value form, coffee assessment form was created, the 2004 form, to today. The coffee industry has evolved a lot, and so that's kind of what we're going to be discussing here today. So this is the definition that we came up with. Specialty coffee is a coffee or coffee experience that is recognized for its distinctive attributes, resulting in a higher value within the marketplace. So I mentioned that we're a global coffee association, and if you think about a global coffee association, it's a very diverse group of people around the world who drink coffee, who appreciate different attributes, flavors, characteristics, or elements of what a coffee is, and they will pay more money for those attributes if they achieve what they're looking for. So here we are in Houston, it's the Specialty Coffee Association's Expo show. If you walk around this floor, if you try the coffees, you will find that very few of them have taste notes of coffee. Okay? You'll find taste notes like floral, citrus, vanilla, peach, plum, like blackcurrant, blackberry. You're also going to find that the roast degrees change a lot. You're going to find that the coffees have all these different characteristics or attributes that make them different or special. You'll also find that the people who are presenting those coffees to you have either grown them, who can talk to you knowledgeably about where that coffee's from, how it was grown, if it's certified, what the processing method was, what the variety is, what the species is. You'll see passion, you'll see excitement from the baristas who are serving these coffees. You'll see their expertise, their science, and so on, goes into brewing these coffees. So there's all of these different ways which make coffee special. These are all attributes of specialty coffee. And for each one of us in this room, I can bet you that we can all have a favorite coffee on the show floor. I just drank a Takeover AA. phenomenal. It has this like blackcurrant taste note. It's a geisha peaberry. Never had that before. Tastes like blackcurrant, like the old classic Kenyan coffees, which was one of my favorite coffees and one of the things that got me into specialty coffee in the first place. Because when you try a coffee like that, you taste those kind of flavors, that juiciness that's in the coffee, you're like, that is amazing, and it's completely different. That gets people into coffee. That was my experience, but your experience might be completely different. And there's nothing wrong with my experience being as it is or your experience being differently. But what we're recognizing is that people appreciate lots of different attributes or elements of a coffee that make it special, that they will rate as higher quality, whereas other people will rate as lower quality. So this definition encompasses that. It's also a simple definition that can be broadly applied around the world. It's measurable and it recognizes value. Okay, so we talked about the SCA's purpose of equity, thriving, equitable and sustainable industry. And at the core of that is defining what specialty coffee is so that we can really make sure it recognizes value for everyone along the coffee value chain who's represented here today. So the value of attributes can be measured. When we talk about attributes, I've sort of given you a clue as to what they are, but it's flavors, it's the grade of the coffee, it's certification, it's understanding the variety, it's understanding the species, the processing, the farm name, all of that stuff all contributes value. When you go into a coffee shop and you buy a coffee, like how do you decide what bag of coffee to buy? I mean, you look at the packaging, you like the packaging, you look at the origin, you know you like Colombia, you look at, some taste notes, you're like, oh, I like that. And then you look at the roast, you're like, yeah, I like it medium or dark or light. And these are sort of all the different attributes that you will use to decide whether you should buy that coffee, but also whether you'll pay more for that coffee or less for that coffee. So it's pretty commonsensical. This is not rocket science, which is one of the great things about it. It's very easily understandable by a lot of people. So we measure attributes, we can understand the value. So let's, I repeated this slide here just because I want to kind of reinforce this message of like what actually is the specialty coffee. And now that you understand a bit more about attributes, and you can really appreciate some of the words here. So we've defined the specialty coffee as a coffee or coffee experience recognized for its distinctive attributes resulting in a higher value within the marketplace. So notice it's coffee or coffee experience, because coffee is not just about the thing you taste. It's not just about the sensory experience. It's about walking into a cafe and seeing your favorite barista, and that barista knowing what coffee you're ordering and making it for you before you've even ordered it at the counter and paid for it. Like your coffee's on the table. That is an experience that makes it special. It's also getting up in the morning and going to your brewer that you've had for 10 years, making a great coffee. But that is also part of a specialty coffee experience. Like you make it personal. And we're a global coffee association. So that means that there are different tastes. People have appreciate different aspects of coffee around the world. Now, this is indicative, okay? The whole of Central and South America doesn't just like brown sugar. They like a whole range of attributes for coffee, but you'll see that different parts of the world will appreciate different characteristics. And so we have to really understand that we need a tool, the coffee value assessment system, that will help us appreciate this diversity of flavors. It will help us from the producing end of coffee all the way to the consuming end of coffee, find the right coffee for the right audience. And that is what the coffee value assessment system is all about. It's much more specific about identifying the value of coffee, but also where that coffee is valued. And that's really important, okay? It's more than just putting a number to a coffee and saying this coffee is 84, therefore you should like it, because that number doesn't mean anything.
Let's go back to that map.
Yeah. So let's talk about the coffee value assessment system. By measuring coffee's attributes, we can understand its value and communicate what makes it special, helping us make coffee better. Okay, the mission of the SCA, to make coffee better. So We do that by understanding sensory attributes. The sensory attributes being the aroma, the flavor, aftertaste, the acidity, the mouthfeel. These are all sensory. Sweetness in the coffee, these are all the sensory attributes which we assess in a coffee. We evaluate those, we can put a score to them in order to understand what it is that we're looking for in what a particular coffee has that we can value. We can do sensory tests to help us evaluate these sensory attributes in the coffee. And this is where the coffee value assessment system is a big step forward from the 2004 form. Because the 2004 form, which is our old way of evaluating coffee quality, had a few drawbacks, limitations. It was great for the last 20 years, but the industry has moved on a lot. And one of the things that has evolved a lot is sensory science and our understanding of how the human brain works and how we can evaluate and appreciate coffee. So we have these three different kinds of sensory assessments: discriminative, descriptive, and effective. And the new coffee value assessment system lets us do those different tests separately, which is aligned with the principles of sensory science. So just to give you an example, what is discriminative, what is descriptive, and what is effective. But I tasted 3 coffees. I liked the third one. It tasted floral and sweet. It was the best. So in sensory science, an effective claim is emotional, I like it. I like it, I don't like it. Or I liked it a lot. So the discriminative claim is there were 3 coffees and you distinguish that of those 3 coffees, I liked that one, the third one. And then the descriptive claim is it tasted floral and sweet. So when we have a standardized sensory assessment methodology with a flavor lexicon, and we use that flavor lexicon to identify the flavors, and that is descriptive. It's also objective, which is important. So it's objective, which means it's repeatable, which means that you can calibrate a group of people to all use the same terms, to all rank them with the same intensity, which is also something that is not part of the 2004 form. So the descriptive assessment, we report information about a coffee's sensory attributes using basic olfactory references, so a set of defined references, including fragrance, aroma, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, sweetness, and mouthfeel. If you want me to describe what any of those actually are, I can do so. But I think for the purposes of today, we'll keep it high level, and then we can go into depth if you would like at a later date. Grab a seat. Welcome. So flavor notes are descriptive, and the descriptive assessment is a quantitative sensory test that seeks to profile a product on all of its perceived sensory attributes. So we describe those sensory attributes, but then we can also rank their intensity. So it's not when you rank an intensity, it's a 0 to 14 scale. You can say that it's a 7, it's in the middle, or it's a 12, but you can actually repeatedly rank that intensity, but you're not saying I like it. So it might be like a 14 on the intensity scale, but it could be 14 of a characteristic you hate, but it's still 14. So it's much more repeatable and objective. Then we have the effective assessment. So this is the emotional one. Do I like it? Is it high quality? So the descriptive assessment is what does it taste like? The effective assessment is do I like the coffee and how much? And is this coffee of high quality? Because high quality is really independent to you or the people you're buying that coffee for. Because one person's definition of quality is different to another person's definition of quality. So effective assessment is any method to assess acceptance, liking, preference, or emotions for a stimulus or stimuli, in this case, coffee. And we've moved away from saying that we're defining quality. We're saying it's an impression of quality. So this is, again, a big shift from the 2004 form, because we're not so much interested in you saying that this coffee is 85 and therefore it's going to get this price. We're saying, I think this coffee is around an 85. I like it because it has these attributes, and I either like it for myself or I like it because it's good for my coffee brand. It's good for this customer group I have. It's good for this espresso blend I have. It's good for the filter coffee I want it to go into. Or I know I'm buying it for a specific market, and I know that that market will appreciate this coffee. So quality in this case is what your customers are going to actually pay more for, or what you personally will pay more for. And that again is a really fundamental shift. So as I was saying, it's your own preference or the known market preference for that coffee. And then another big difference with the coffee value assessment system. So we've talked here, those two the three tests, the discriminative, effective, and descriptive. They're a sensory test, right? But what about all the other elements in coffee, which were not included in the old form, in the old assessment system? They're what we call the extrinsic assessment. And these extrinsic attributes are things that we all have been naturally applying to the coffee and how we value it and how we think about it when we buy it for our audience. They're things like certifications, grades, flavor profile, size, the certification, the variety, anything that's outside of the coffee is part of the extrinsic assessment. So it's about the coffee, country of origin, name of farm, certification, process type. That is extrinsic. The intrinsic attributes are anything that's within the coffee. So all the sensory qualities, the physical attributes, and so on. So when you think about how important those elements are, when you go to buy a coffee in a coffee shop or in a supermarket or anywhere where you buy your coffee, you don't just value it based on its flavor notes. You think about all of the different elements which make it special. Packaging, the color, all those elements are really important for that coffee, and they make up the extrinsic. So the coffee value assessment system is a value discovery paradigm. It's a new system for understanding what is the value of this coffee, and that is the system in a nutshell. Physical qualities of the coffee. This was in the old system. It has not changed much. It's about the defect count, the moisture, the grade of the coffee, the size, density of the beans, and so on. The descriptive and effective, these are the two sensory attributes, and the extrinsic is outside of coffee or about the coffee. And it's with all four of those that we discover the value of a coffee. These assessments are not all done at the same time. That will take hours. They can be applied at different times depending on your purpose, which is also another shift that's really important with the coffee value assessment system. We used to do one form, couple the coffees. Now we have a specific purpose for the evaluation that we're going to go through to understand what the value is of that coffee. But over time, depending on where you are in the supply chain, you will do all of these assessments in order to fully value the coffee. So it's a holistic, high-resolution picture of a specific coffee across the four assessment types, completed separately to avoid bias. Which is that avoiding bias is very much aligned with the sensory science principles of the sensory assessments. And it's a full evaluation. It acts as a value discovery tool, creating a transparent record of a coffee's valued attributes. Why have we done this? We talked about equity across the value chain. This is much more equitable. It's a much more sustainable way to think about what is important in a coffee in terms of understanding its assessment. So we're building a more detailed picture of how different individuals value different coffees around the world. It's a value discovery system, and it's aligned with modern sensory science. And this is all very much aligned with the Specialty Coffee Association's purpose, making coffee better, and its mission to foster a global coffee community, global being the operative word, and an equitable, thriving, and sustainable system for coffee. So, there we are. This presentation can take an hour. We can do a whole course on this. This is a nutshell, hopefully to spark some interest and sort of maybe inspire some questions. So if you have any questions, now's the time. Yes.
So I'm curious about all the things you said, but I'm curious about what are the real issues that the CBA is addressing that needed to be changed?
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's meant to be an equitable thing. How does this create equity?
Yep.
And then you said it removes bias, but it sounds like the extrinsic stuff and some of the other stuff that I like itself is the bias.
Yeah.
So
good question. So so there's a number of questions there. So the 2004 formula. So the bias. The way the human brain works, we struggle to go between an effective claims and descriptive claims. So we simply can't. So with the old form, you were saying this coffee had a quality. I'm going to give it 7, 7.5, 9 if I really like it. That moving from liking of a coffee, it was never objective. It was very much saying, I like the coffee, or I find these aspects of quality high, and therefore I'm scoring it high. That is a much more an effective claim. But then to actually claim that it's and then to go and use the descriptive assessment and say it has these flavor notes or these attributes, that is going from effective to descriptive. And so sensory science tells us that is not possible. That's not possible. You can't do it without introducing bias. You either do one or the other to a high level, but when you do both those kind of tests, the descriptive test and the discriminative test, in one assessment, then there's bias introduced. So it's a natural kind of cognitive bias that we have.
Agreed upon bias?
No. Well,
Meaning that like if a room of doctors agrees that this coffee is qualitatively 85.
Yeah. So that's called intersubjectivity. So you can actually get a panel, right? And you can calibrate a panel in a room to say, yes, we all agree this coffee is 85 and 86 and this one's 82 and this coffee has these attributes, okay? That is possible, and you'll see that in cupping rooms everywhere. But with the old system, what we were trying to do is say that there's someone in this country or this country, this importer, this exporter, this roaster, this cafe, and we're trying to get them all to say the same thing. Okay, this coffee's 85, this coffee has these attributes. That is where the system falls down. So you can buy coffee and you can agree within this room. We could all go through and say, yes, this is caramel and this coffee we think is 84. That's fine. But when you broaden that and you try and bring in 10,000 people to do that same thing, that's where the system fails. And that's, yeah.
Here's a good question that, let's say the 85 example, but with some of the things you said in your presentations, that also opens it up so that someone can say it's an 81.
Yeah, or a 72. Yeah.
And that would be an acceptable way of creating the coffee.
Absolutely.
So this person is buying the coffee, let's say she decides 85.
Yeah.
He decides 92.
Yeah.
He decides 72. And the farmer wants 675.
So you have to think about your roles in the industry. Okay. So who's buying from who here? Who's the farmer? Who's the roaster? So you got to think very specifically, like why, the farmer's always going to say this coffee is high scoring, or the farmer might say, look, this coffee has these attributes, these flavor characteristics, and you can say, look, I agree on them, and actually I really like them. And you're not going to buy the coffee because it's 85. You're going to buy the coffee because it has the attributes you're looking for, because it has the mouthfeel that you need for the particular purpose it's going for. That's why you buy the coffee, because you could have an 85 from one specific lot on a farm in Brazil, and then an 85 from another lot on that same farm. One can be a pulp natural, the other can be a natural. They're two different coffees. Okay, you're not going to buy it because it's 85. You're going to buy it because the pulp natural has
What kind of different evaluations?
Yeah.
We would value that price differently. That price, right? So
Yes and no. Yeah, but you value the coffee not on the score. You value the coffee based on the attributes it has.
Right, but I'm saying that
Yeah.
if I like it more than the others, or
Yeah.
less, I won't pay the same price.
Yeah, you'll find a different coffee. Yeah,
And then, so how does this address the inequity?
because we're saying that there's no one person in the value chain who can define quality. Okay, so that means that like there's been a lot of examples where coffee is put into a contract, and someone says, I'll buy this coffee. We agree it's 85. It can land at below that 85, and then you can be like, well, it didn't land at the quality I want. I'm not going to pay you the same price, or we'll pay you this amount for this coffee. But we have to agree on that quality score. So this is just saying that actually that quality score, we can agree on the attributes we're looking for. We can agree on what we think the score is. You can tell me why you think it's an 85. I can agree on why you think it's an 85. And I know that if you think it's an 85 because it has chocolate and a medium intensity body and this and that, then that's why you like it. And I'm going to try and find those coffees for you. But coffee is bought on relationships. It's bought on like an understanding of all the different complexity, like the complex sort of elements that make a coffee special. You don't buy it based on a score.
I mean, here's the question. In our case, let's say, like, if we can take this CBA and we're deciding that we agree upon a contract where I'm buying coffee from either chocolate, cherry, whatever you like.
Yeah.
And a fisherman said, okay, good, send it. Put it in a box, put it across the world, and it arrives. But I'm copying that arrival center, but it doesn't have the chocolate cherry.
Yeah.
I can then reject it based on that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Of course, I mean, but that would happen today. I mean, you're not going to buy, if a coffee arrives woody or in the condition that it shouldn't have, the moisture levels too high, then you can agree that in the contract. Yeah. Yeah. So these are all good questions. Yeah. You can, if no one else is asking questions, then go for it. Yes.
The big reason for it is that the SCA is, well, it's been described to me as basically taken over the Q brand.
Yep.
Stolen it has been described as. So what's going on with that? How, why? What is the need for the SCA to take the Q? And what was the deficiency of the Q that you need to take over?
These are good questions as well. Yanis is in the room to answer those ones specifically. So I don't want to take the floor away from him, but we're gonna answer questions about the Q in a minute. But yeah, don't forget the Q was based on the 2004 system, and so this is going to be an evolution of the whole Q grading system, the whole assessment. And it's not taking anything away. It's more about what the coffee industry really needs, which is an institution that is devoted to development work at origin and supporting that development work and being really focused on that. So I think all the news about the Q will be unfolding over the next few days and few months, and I think it's really good news for the industry, and that's why CQI and SCA have partnered up to do that. But that can be Yanis's question. We can I'm a big fan of porterfilter.net, by the way. I used to listen to that a long time ago. So yeah, but it's such a cool show. Yeah. Any other questions on the coffee value assessment system? No? Okay, I'll stick around. So if you think of anything, feel free to ask. Sure. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick introduction of our presenters, and then I will hand the floor over to them. For the overview of the program, we have our curriculum director, Chelsea, and we have our education officer, Dorit, both with the SCA. And then after they give their presentation, we'll have a short Q&A session with Yanis, our CEO, and with Peter, our Chief Research Officer. So, and with Kim Elena, our Sustainability Officer. So, save your questions for the end, and they will answer them. All right, I will hand it over. And it's just a slap.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that should do advancing.
All right. Like Anna said, my name's Dorit Lassard. I actually handle a lot of the administrative aspect of our certificate programs. Chelsea works in our curriculum development department, and she is mainly responsible for curriculum development of our new Q program. And she's going to discuss a little bit about the program, and then I'm going to take it from her and talk about what that means for Q graders, Q instructors, and then also for how people can take our new program and then also teach our new program. So,
Do you want to talk through that slide? Just
yeah, I'm not sorry I talked through that. No, go ahead.
no.
Oh,
I
yes.
think this is you.
So, this information should look relatively familiar to people if you've been on our website or press release or anything of that nature. This talks about the partnership that has been formed between CQI and SCA. And this is particularly towards courses and when we are going to be starting our new courses for the Q program, and then when courses that CQI is handling, when those will be sunsetting. So you'll see two key pieces of information up there. September 30th is when CQI-led classes will be no longer offered. So anything that began before September 30th. And then starting October 1st, those will be courses that will be under the new Q or the Evolved Q when the Q is transferred to SCA. So it's a lot of technical, I know, but that's kind of the world that I live in. But Chelsea is now going to talk a little bit more about the program, which is being referred to as the Evolved Q program. That name might take a different version at some point in time in terms of the evolved aspect, but we need a way to reference the new program versus the program that is currently being offered by CQI. So go ahead, Chelsea.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chelsea Dubé. I'm the Curriculum Development Director at the Specialty Coffee Association and the lead author of the course content that will comprise the Evolved Q Grader program. So 2 years ago, the SCA introduced coffee value assessment, shifting our focus from a coffee's sensory profile alone to a more all-encompassing, holistic appreciation of the many attributes that make a coffee special. And this broader and more inclusive way of valuing coffee supports more effective communication across the supply chain and helps us as an industry better get in touch with what consumers in different markets find valuable. I'll resist the urge to dive deeply into CVA. I think you all completed that exercise just before we stepped up to the stage here. The CVA has 4 assessments, which might also feel familiar. And these assessments are going to form the foundation of the content of the Evolved Q program. A licensed Q grader will be a licensed user of the CVA system and of these 4 assessments. We envision a 6-day program, which will feel familiar if you've taken the Q Arabica grader program, for example. And we envision 2 courses. This part might feel a little different, so I'll provide some additional context here. We envision a 4-day course that covers the descriptive, affective, and the extrinsic assessments. It focuses on sensory assessment as well as how to identify and document the informational attributes that might add to a coffee's value, where it came from, who produced it, what processing method was used, what certificates that coffee holds, etc. We also envision a 2-day course that focuses on physical assessment or the grading of green unroasted coffee. And both of these courses will be conducted in person. Both of these courses will have a written exam component to test learners' theoretical knowledge of the concepts covered, as well as some practical exam components to test learners' hands-on skills. Now, we predict that some learners will still want to complete the full 6 days in one go, just like they do now in the Q program. And that is an option that trainers will have. Trainers can offer these courses back-to-back in sort of a boot camp style learning experience, allowing their learners the opportunity to earn the credentials really efficiently. We also know that some learners really struggle to take 6 full days away from work and away from home. So we're giving trainers the option to also offer them separately if they choose, if the learners in their market find that to be useful. The finer points of the content, as you might imagine, are still being developed, still evolving, but I can provide some high priority things that we're keeping in mind as we navigate that design and development process. First and foremost, the content is heavily research informed. It integrates results from dozens of research studies, not just studies conducted by the coffee industry for the coffee industry, but also from adjacent fields like sensory science and consumer behavior. So trainers and learners can expect a course that reflects the contemporary knowledge of these professional disciplines. Theoretical knowledge is important. Perhaps even more important is the practical hands-on aspects of the course. We really want learners to be able to take these assessments back to their place of work and apply them successfully. Therefore, they need opportunities to get hands-on during class. So we're looking at every opportunity to layer activities, to allow opportunities for the trainers to share feedback with their learners prior to any sort of assessment, so learners can build their confidence across the 4 assessments. And finally, perhaps the most important, one thing we're keeping top of mind is the importance of relevant and job task applicable skills. Basically, when we think about the people using CVA out in the industry, what kind of jobs are they performing? What knowledge and skills do they need? And we're using this to inform everything from the content of the program to the structure of the assessments to the activities conducted, sort of all encompassing in that learning experience. So I'll stop there. Certainly, if you have any questions about the content, I welcome those at the conclusion of the presentation.
Okay. So the next part of this presentation is about how do you become a evolved Q grader and Q instructor. We're going to take this in 3 parts. We're going to talk about our learners first, then our teachers or instructors, and then our facilities or campuses. You'll also notice that this slide is divided into 2 sections. One is about the program that Chelsea just gave a description of. That is going to be available in October of 2025. And when you take that program, which we are calling the Evolved Q program, you will become the Evolved Q grader. So once that program is available, that is that pathway. But you might be asking yourself, well, what happens to Q graders or sensory skills professional certificate holders, because we're just talking about Q graders right now. If both of these individuals or groups of individuals earn the CVA for Cuppers certificate by December 31st, and they are either a lapsed or current Q grader, Robusta and Arabica, they can hold the Evolved Q grader license. If you hold the sensory skills professional certificate, same thing. If you earn the CVA for Cuppers course certificate by December 31st, you likewise can become the Evolved Q grader. So these are what we are calling fast track pathways for people in these current categories to become an Evolved Q grader. All right. That is for learners. For teachers or instructors, once we have our new program available, October 25th, the people who can teach these are sensory skills, ASTs, and people who have taken the new program. They will become Evolved Q instructors. Okay? But that pathway really doesn't exist until the new program is available. These people are on a fast track, all right? A fast track to become a Evolved Q instructor. Our CVA trainers, any current Q instructors and Q assistant instructors, and then any SCA sensory skills ASTs. Anyone here has a pathway to become a Evolved Q instructor. You'll see the CVA trainers, they can move very quickly into becoming a Q instructor. The Q instructor and the assistant instructor, along with the ASTs, need to have taken the CVA for Cuppers course and have passed that and earned the certificate. They can become recognized as an Evolved Q instructor, which means they're recognized in our system and they have a badge. But they must do an online onboarding in order to teach the courses. So we're going to recognize in the system and then realize that they have to take an onboarding so that they feel comfortable enough to be teaching this course that Chelsea was just talking about, and then they can teach those courses. So it's a little bit of a two-step process. We recognize them, they take the onboarding, and then we authorize them to teach a course within our system. So these are 3 fast-track pathways that deal with different categories of individuals or instructors that are kind of in this world that we have at this time. Okay? The last area we deal with are facilities or campuses, areas in which we have the courses taught. The Q, all Q venues, I should say, but please do notice the asterisk at the bottom. Post-harvesting processing program Q venues still remain with CQI, but all the other ones will transition to an SCA Premier Training Campus. And because that was a lot of information, we're going to put it all on one slide. This is basically when you're looking at everything that is being transitioned as we move from CQI managing this to SCA managing it. These are all the areas that we have provided pathways for. And sometimes it can get a lot, but remember, when you're looking here at your Evolved program, that's launching in 2025. This over here envisions that we have launched the program as well, which we're calling the Evolved Q program, which Chelsea was speaking to. So there was a lot that we put together here trying to accommodate, people who have spent a lot of time and money investing into these particular areas, but we have definitely wanted to address all of those particular pathways. For anyone who wants to take part of the fast track pathways, so I'm going to reiterate again, that is anyone who is a Q grader, lapsed or current, anyone who is a current Q instructor or assistant instructor, they can go onto our website, fill out this form, and if they've already completed the CVA for Cuppers course and they have a certificate in our system, they have already received the Evolved Q Grader badge or Q Instructor badge. We already have 100 of those that have been issued, 50-50 between Q Grader and Q Instructor, the Evolved Q Grader, Evolved Q Instructor badges. So that is the process for getting to the badges of Evolved Q Instructor and Q Grader. And I want to know if any of my other colleagues have anything they'd like to add. No?
Thank you.
Sure.
So much. Okay.
I know it's a lot of information.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sure. Thank you, Chelsea and Dorit. Okay, so we're gonna go on to our Q&A portion, and we're also gonna share some information with you. And I would ask that we cut the cameras, please, for this one and the videos, just because we're going to be sharing some embargoed information, and we'd like it to stay within this room.